Welcome to PL Podcast with Greater Sudbury's poet laureate Vera Constantineau.
Hi, it's Vera. Welcome to the third episode of the PL Pod. It's a beautiful day here in Greater Sudbury. I've got the windows thrown wide open and the breeze is ruffling papers on my pod desk. There was something of a delay in this recording. The neighbor was cutting grass and weed whacking for whatever seemed like forever. But oh well, it's a noisy world we live in. Speaking of worlds, nice segue. The many worlds books can open for us is a gift. And it's a gift that should be given to children as young as you possibly can. When I was under 5 years old, my sister Amy began to take me with her when she visited the library in Little Current. The whole experience was a treat. The library then was a small building with a stone exterior, and it had served as a jail in earlier times. The bars were still on the windows. Probably still are because the building still exists. Inside, I presume the building was renovated because there was nothing jail-like about the place. The smell of the books, the lighting, the reading tables, the glass cases at the back that held special artifacts, it was fascinating to me. I was a little intimidated by the librarian, but there again, she interested me. Her hair was always perfectly coiffed. She wore lovely dresses and suits. She painted her nails red, and her lips were always coated with a similar shade. Her voice was really deep, and I think that's what made me fear her a little. You don't get that anymore. Librarians are fun. Amy would settle me at the children's section, and I would look through the shelves and choose the 3 books that I was allowed to take home. We went to the library each week, and as time went by, I worked my way through the picture books, the early readers selection, and then because I learned to read before I went to school, I moved along to the upper shelves. I read my way through the Honey Bunch Morton books and the Secret 7 series, and the Honey Bunch Morton books were written by a variety of authors, as happened back then. But the Secret 7 series, which was about junior sleuths, was written by Enid Blyton, and it was one of my favorites. Eventually, I moved along to the Pollyanna books and so on, and, at home we always had books, and I was allowed to read any of them, plus newspapers. Some of the books we had were beyond my comprehension, but others, such as the Thornton W. Burgess Green Meadow books, they were very, very dear to me. In grade 9, I found a Harlequin romance on a bottom shelf in the high school library. Needless to say, finding that book sent me off in a different direction, but that's a story for another time. I think the span of my early reading helped to develop the eclectic reading taste that I have now. I like fiction, nonfiction, and any book that incorporates humor into the plot. That's a particular favorite of mine. That I've been chosen as poet laureate should suggest that poetry is a large part of my reading and writing life, and it is. But it's obviously not all I read, and poetry is not all I write. I enjoy writing short fiction and creative nonfiction. Recently, I began to write haibun, which combines prose of varying length, followed up by a haiku. I'm going to read you my first published haibun now. It's called You. I was green back in the day, believed in love and empathizing. Then you came along, and now I know there are some roots you shouldn't put down, some seeds you ought not to sow. And yes, places not gone. In the heat of a wondrous day, bed messed, heart sore, I came to my senses. But when I finally rolled away, all I was gone. All the things we never said. Stone in my shoe. That was published in the Haibun Journal. With creative nonfiction, I write both serious and humorous pieces. I'm not the only laureate to branch out either. Roger Nash, prior to being laureate, won awards for his short fiction, and Kim Fawner writes plays. Tom LeDuc writes zombie tales. Chloe LaDuchesse writes poetry and short fiction. Each genre requires its own package of writing knowledge, and I've spent years gathering that. I've done it in a variety of ways. I enjoy online courses, and I've taken many. The latest course I completed was offered by UBC and taught novel editing and rewriting. I attend workshops when I can, and I always find those inspiring. I don't think my love of learning is ever going to change. I thrive on learning new things and exploring new challenges. One of the challenges I enjoy is entering contests. Unfortunately, with most contest entries, unless you win, there's no feedback, so you'll never know why your poem or short story was overlooked. That doesn't mean you shouldn't continue writing and entering your work. Being rejected is a common experience for all writers, and it shouldn't discourage you. Just dust yourself off and try again. The same should be said for non-contest situations. When you attempt to publish your work with an online or print journal or magazine, keep trying. You'll learn as you write. And at some point, an editor you've approached may be the person who relates to your writing. And that's an exciting moment, realizing someone actually gets your work. If you're not having success, maybe look at your work critically, or get a critique partner, or go to workshops, watch educational videos on YouTube. Work at your writing. We can always learn new things, right? With the creative nonfiction, as with humor, haiku, senryu, any writing really, you must be observant of the world around you. One of my favorite pieces of wall art actually moved me to write the following creative nonfiction piece. It's called Respecting the Arts. Last year I went to a yard sale / estate sale where a man was selling off his mother's household goods. I spotted a hand-stitched picture of a magnificent 10-point white-tailed buck in a field setting. Depicted also are clouds, evergreens, a flock of flyers that look like pterodactyls. And the buck is alert. You can see this by the set of his shoulders and head. It looks as if he's checking in with his does. You know, the ones they send out to scout the lay of the land. His tension suggests that maybe one of them indicated all might not be well in the sunlight. The guy selling off the goods at this yard sale said it was done by his mother. This is a carefully crafted piece of needlework. Even the expression in the deer's eyes say something, though I'm not sure what it says. The crafter's son was asking $2 for a fine framed example of attention to detail. I was horrified that he valued it so cheaply. I know what you're likely thinking. What's he supposed to do with it? Well, perhaps recognize the talent of his long-lost mother and hang the thing in his living room or hallway. Think of her hands and hang it in the basement or the bathroom. But no, he was selling it off, asking a measly $2 for the buck. I bought it. How could I not? When someone with enough talent with a needle can put expression in a buck's eyes, can produce movement in stitched clouds, and make you think of mighty pterodactyls, then someone should value that talent. I have it here in my office. We picked up a couple of other things that day too, but none of them moved me the way this piece of stitchery does, and I hope the work's creator was hovering that day, that she knew by my expression I was going to bring that buck home and hang it where I could admire it for a long time. It's likely, if you've never done needlework, you won't recognize the real respect it deserves. Years ago, my mother and I worked on a white linen dresser scarf with ivy pattern. We each embroidered an end. My mother's stitching was neat and tidy. Her understitching is almost as perfect as the top stitching. Mine is not. Still, it took months to complete, and so many chatty hours we spent together that the chatty hours were almost as valuable as the actual dresser scarf. So yes, I admire fine stitchery, and I respect the art. That is creative nonfiction. All true, just stated simply. One of the earliest humorous poems I heard recited was from a high school textbook titled Invitation to Poetry. The title of that poem is Sir Smash 'em Up, and it was written by Emile Victor Rioux. It begins, "Good afternoon, Sir Smash-em-up. We're having tea. Do take a cup. Sugar and milk? Now let me see. 2 lumps, I think. Good gracious me, the silly thing slipped off your knee." Losing his cup is only the first mishap of Sir Smash-em-up. He goes on to break a valuable chair, a window, and a china plate. In the end, in spite of the breakage, he's invited back to tea. When I was required to memorize poetry for class, which happened in the old days, I often chose poems from this book, and there are very few in it that I don't enjoy. A couple of years ago, Clay Campbell, who facilitates the open mic at the library, told me about an annual humorous poetry contest called the Wurgle Flump Humor Poetry Contest, and I did write a poem to enter. I will read you a couple of stanzas from one of my failed entries. This one is titled 3 Squares a Day. 3 squares a day, oh yeah, 3 squares a day. 1 ply, that's what they say, will keep your worries away. Still I feel I must ask why, when the paper's just 1 ply, the septic pros decry we must think of lake and sky. And now you know why it's not a winner. However, anyone with a field bed will likely relate to the 1 ply. Whether you are strictly a reader or you imagine yourself writing something, keep in mind that the library offers the best path to both reading and writing. There's no end to the books you can find, and the collection just keeps on growing. I know I look forward to returning to the writing groups I foster in our local branch, and when the libraries open up, I hope you'll join me for one of my sessions. Until next time, this is Vera saying bye and write something. It feels good.